Hello, my pretties. Okay, we are continuing on with our dragon segment. And we've already talked about the Western dragon, your very traditional dragon. And last video, we talked about the wyvern or wyvern. I ended up with wyvern in the end, but you are welcome to pronounce it however you want. There's probably a right way. I chose my way, and you can too. All right, welcome to Fire and Legends. We're talking about our next dragon creature, and we're going to be exploring the legends, history, and symbolism of the world's most fascinating creatures. We've already done 2 so far. I am Lore, in case you did not know, and that's just L-O-R. We're talking about lore, L-O-R-E. My name is Lore, L-O-R. I don't know if I ever really introduced myself. Maybe I did. I don't know. I'm introducing myself again for anyone who's new. Welcome. We talk about mythological things, fantasy things. I write books, and a lot of this is just research for myself, and I'm just sharing with you what I find. Granted, when it comes to the dragon stuff, we are being pretty surface level. There's a lot, and we are hitting the main important points. But I am compiling my research, and we'll see what happens with that. It's mostly for myself. We are going to be moving on to our 3rd dragon of this segment, the Drake. Grab your sword, or maybe just, I don't know, your coffee, your tea, your hot chocolate. That's me, a hot chocolate. I'm a hot chocolate girl. I do like my tea. I use it mostly for medicinal purposes, like if I have tummy problems. But I do enjoy a good cup of tea. My one that I have, my daily at this point is Creo, which is chocolate brewed like coffee. If you want to try something new, they're not sponsoring this. I just love it. My husband is so good. I could go on about this. We're not going to. We're talking about drakes. Okay, moving on. Okay. Before we get into the specifics, let's start with the basics. What is a drake? This is kind of where we've started in every other video. The term drake is often used interchangeably with dragon, but there are important distinctions. Drakes are typically depicted as a type of dragon, but are often portrayed as wingless or with smaller wings than their more famous cousins. They're often seen as 4-legged creatures, unlike wyverns, which have 2, or their dragon friends, which also have 2. I'm getting the wings and the legs mixed up. Okay, let's try this again. The drake is 4-legged, like the Western dragon. Unlike the wyverns or wyverns, which have 2 legs. Because remember, their arms, their wings are also their arms. Okay? Got that. Important. Drakes are typically serpentine in shape with muscular lizard-like bodies. And I cannot help but imagine the How to Train Your Dragon, that big round one with the itty-bitty wings. That's not right, but that's kind of the image that's stuck in my head. It's a little too rotund to be a drake, but here we are. That's the image that is stuck in my head, and now it might be stuck in yours too. I apologize. But anyway, the drake may be covered in scales, or it might have rough hide. And their most notable feature is their imposing presence. So not the cute little rotund guy with the itty-bitty wings. Not him. He's too cute. But unlike many of their fire-breathing dragon friends in Western mythology, drakes don't always have the same destructive powers. Instead, they're often associated with brute strength and sometimes even more grounded menace. Let me explain. But first, we're going to talk about the etymology, because that's our next thing. The etymology. So this is interesting. The term comes from the Old English word draca, meaning dragon or serpent, which in turn came from the Latin word draconem. I have a pronunciation guide this time. I guess I failed when it came to the wyvern one. We'll see about the next ones too. But regardless, this refers to a large serpent or a mythical dragon, while in modern English, drake is often associated with a male duck. Quack, quack. The original meaning referred to a fierce, serpentine creature. It was later used to refer to smaller, less fearsome dragons, which is how it fits into our mythology today. So we're seeing there's this origin of dragon, right? You have your Draco, Drake, all of these things that were originally the same thing. And then there's this split as culture really evolves and transforms. Whoosh, into the next thing. We're going to move on to the rich history of the drake in folklore. In many European myths, drakes were seen as guardians or keepers of treasure, much like our other dragons. Remember, we start somewhere and then we branch off. So, their role was often similar to that of a traditional dragon, but without the same grandiose, fiery ability. Take, for example, the famous story of Saint Michael and the dragon. While not always directly described as a drake, it is said to be a smaller, wingless creature that symbolizes the struggle against chaos and evil. In Norse mythology, a drake was not just a beast of legend, but also part of the cultural landscape. The famous Norse dragon Fafnir, who lorded treasure, lorded? Well, I guess he lorded over treasure. He hoarded treasure, though. He hoarded treasure and was slain by the hero Sigurd, okay? This may be a drake, though many myths conflate dragons and drakes in the way that makes it difficult to say for sure. The drake's connection with treasure hoard is consistent across cultures, often tying them to greed, chaos, and death. So far, the only real difference between a drake and a wyvern, well, no, wyverns are vicious. The wyvern is your angry dragon. Drake is just your WWE dragon. Yeah, maybe. I watched that as a kid. I don't know why my parents let us watch that. And then I lost interest, I guess. When we think of drakes, we often picture a creature with reptilian features, long bodies, muscular limbs, and powerful tails. In fact, they're often depicted in a way that gives them the stature of a serpent or lizard. When I think serpent, though, I think of a snake, right? A serpent is a snake. So a serpent with legs, kind of like an Eastern dragon. I'm thinking more lizard here. So a lizard, sometimes with formidable claws and an intimidating posture. Their wings, if they have them, tend to be smaller than those of dragons, making them more grounded. However, they're still capable of swift movements and are formidable in battle, because it wouldn't be a dragon if it wasn't. Unlike dragons, however, drakes don't always possess the ability to breathe fire. Their power often lies in physical strength, venomous bites, and sometimes the power to control weather or storms. That's the exciting one, right? In some cases, drakes are tied to natural phenomena like floods or thunderstorms, enhancing their menacing role in folklore. So more forces of nature. Western dragon, fire-breathing, master of, I don't know, he's changed. He's not the chaos that he used to be. And then you have the wyverns, who are just this venomous, mean bite. And then you've got forces of nature in the drake. Drakes versus dragons. This brings us to the common question that I was just talking about. What exactly is the difference between these two creatures? While both are reptilian, dragons are typically more majestic, often portrayed with wings and the ability to fly. They are capable of breathing fire or possess magical powers. We have seen this. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I wrote it that way in one of my books. Drakes, they tend to be more, as we said, grounded and often described as wingless or with smaller wings, which makes them less fantastical, but no less dangerous. Okay? Don't get confused. Their physicality is often more brute force than magical abilities, though some legends, again, like they often do with most things, blur the lines. Drakes are also less intelligent compared to dragons. They may act more like beasts, driven by primal instincts and their desire for treasure. While dragons can be wise, cunning, and even noble, I overused that word in the last 2 videos describing the Western dragon, drakes tend to be seen as more primal, representing raw, destructive power rather than ancient wisdom. So a little more closely related to wyvern. So, what do drakes symbolize? Well, dragons, again, often symbolize wisdom, power, and the elements. Drakes represent a more primal, raw form of chaos. If you're a D&D player, you can think of the dragon as a god, and then a drake as a primordial being, and then the wyvern. You know, with the wyvern, I just keep thinking of a really angry dog shaking it like a what is it, a bulldog? Which one of the bulldog or a Rottweiler, somebody who like cramps on and he doesn't let go and he's just shaking his head when they get agitated and are put in circumstances that they should not be put in. I don't know, you tell me, what do you think? What are your what are they called? Metaphors? Oh, I don't know. The drake's power is physical strength, aggression, their connection to treasure and greed. And in many medieval legends, drakes are seen as obstacles to heroes, guarding treasure or hidden places, representing the trials heroes must overcome. So we're seeing a lot of parallels between these 3 dragons. In a psychological sense, the drake can symbolize untamed, uncontrollable aspects of the self, those parts of our psyche that are driven by base instincts or repressed desires. They serve as reminders of what happens when we fail to control our darker impulses. Don't not control your darker impulses, please. Now, let's look at some famous examples of drakes in myth and legend. One of the most notable, Fafnir, has been mentioned in every video so far about dragons. And I think it's because, one, as we mentioned in our previous video, mythology, especially at the time before there was this real split, kind of just merged them all together, okay? The drake, in my opinion, I think makes the most sense. So, Fafnir, Norse mythology. Once a dwarf, transforms into a drake after he becomes consumed by greed. His story is a tragic one, illustrating how the desire for wealth and power can corrupt and transform a person, or in this case, a dwarf, into a monstrous drake. Now, why I think the drake makes the most sense is because, one, aside from the wyvern, it is very much still connected to treasure hoarding. Of course, your Western dragon does that too. That's the root, right? But they have developed into something more of your scholarly hoard. I don't know. But with the drake, not only does the drake have this deep connection to their hoard, but they are also very, as we mentioned, earthbound, which is very reminiscent, like the dwarf in your traditional mythology, and like what you see in most adaptations and use of this mythology, dwarves are very grounded, earth-centered. They dig for gold and gems and all those things. You see that in Snow White and very much in The Hobbit. So you have these very, and it's also, I believe, Norse mythology where Tolkien derived that concept from. And so just this connection with treasure, the earth, and I don't know, for some reason in my mind, that just makes the most sense for if you want to start breaking down which one Fafnir probably became once you start taking into consideration how things have evolved. I keep using that word too. I'm sorry, but it's the word. Now, in Welsh mythology, the tale of the red dragon and the white dragon from the Mabinogion is another example. These dragons were often interpreted as drakes, with their battle representing the conflict between the forces of Wales and the invading Anglo-Saxons. While they weren't strictly drakes, their role as powerful creatures embodying national struggle gives them a similar symbolic weight. While drakes may not be as famous as their fire-breathing counterparts, Western dragons take the cake. I would say wyverns take the second cake, a little smaller piece of the cake. Drakes even smaller. But they've still managed to make their way into modern fantasy and pop culture, whether in books like The Hobbit or in games like Dungeons and Dragons. Drakes are often used as lesser creatures that can still hold their own in a fight. They are not the ultimate foes, but they're certainly formidable opponents. Drakes also often appear as characters with less intelligence than dragons, but with an equal thirst for treasure and dominance. Real quick, like I've mentioned previously, I bulk record these, and I'm sure someone has mentioned what Smaug is specifically, but I'm going to look it up real quick because now I'm remembering that my brain's being tickled. I think he might be a drake. Someone's probably already corrected me if this is true. Hold on. I'm going to find out real quick. The fire drake. I was all like, he's a Western dragon. That's not true. Okay, here we go. Smaug is classified as a fire drake, or Tolkien and his language, a word that I am not going to try to pronounce. In Tolkien's Legendarium, a powerful flame-breathing dragon of the Third Age. Okay, so Drake, see, Tolkien does this too. It's an overlap. So if you're trying to correct me in previous videos, you're right, but you're also wrong. And so was I. Okay. Flame-breathing dragon of the Third Age. He's considered the last of the great dragons in Middle-earth and is infamous for his attack on Erebor Dale, where he claimed the Lonely Mountain and his treasure hoard. We know that from The Hobbit. In terms of physical form, Smaug is traditionally depicted as a Western dragon, four-legged, winged, and serpentine. However, in Peter Jackson's Hobbit film trilogy, which we discussed before, he was reimagined with 2 legs and wings, resembling a wyvern to enhance his agility and menace on screen, which is, to be fair, wyverns are a more intimidating figure than a Western dragon. Because when I think of Draco in Dragonheart, the way he stands is very proud and noble, which is why I kept using that word. So very different. So depending on the medium, Smaug straddles the line between classic Western dragon and wyvern, but he's also referred to as a drake. So but at his core, he's a cunning, gold-hoarding fire drake with a devastating breath of flame. So he kind of is all three. At least when you take the Hobbit movies into consideration, he becomes all three. But originally, he's kind of this myriad of, well, I guess just what an original dragon was, okay? So Western dragon, but he's called a fire drake. There wasn't much actual differentiation. Okay, we went down the rabbit hole. We're going to pull ourselves out. I'm going to start talking about it. Okay, so going back, drakes are not as famous as their Western dragon counterparts or even the wyvern, but they do appear in The Hobbit as the title of the fire drake, but also in games like Dungeons and Dragons. Drakes are often used as lesser creatures that can still hold their own in a fight, but they're not the ultimate foes, despite the fact that they have weather powers. I feel like that's a super formidable. I'm going to use this somewhere. I'm going to make a drake just one of the big bosses because of his control over the natural world, weather, things like that. I think that's a really interesting idea. I don't know. You tell me in the comments below. What do you think? Drakes might be like kind of stagnant because they can't really fly anywhere, but like if you came across one and it had the power to, I don't know, call lightning on you, like a druid, but times 1,000, which is what I'm imagining. I don't know. But then you have, I don't know, Western dragons with their intelligence would be really scary to come across. Oh, I don't know. Okay, well, regardless. Traditionally, they're not the ultimate foe, but formidable opponents. Drakes also often appear as characters with less intelligence than dragons, but with an equal thirst for treasure and dominance. Pretty sure I've said that before, but it's in my notes again, or I'm rereading notes. I don't know where we are anymore because I went on a tangent. I'm sorry. Not sorry. We're going to need to find out some pop culture appearances. Let's see if we find any. I'm trying to think off the top of my head before I look at my notes. I can't think of any. Okay. So, drakes. Wingless or tiny wings. Four-legged dragons. Sometimes smaller. More serpentine. They're not used a whole lot, okay? They appear as distinct creatures. Their variants include guard drakes, fell drakes, and elemental drakes, like fire or ice drakes. And this is a mounted creature in Dungeons and Dragons. Sorry, I jumped. Okay, Dungeons and Dragons. Drakes appear as wingless, but sometimes elemental creatures which are used as mounts or guardians. And I think this is a new, or no, I'm not going to speculate because I might accidentally mix up actual D&D subclass with something my DM did. But I'm feeling like there's a subclass for fighter. I don't think it's paladin. Fighter maybe, or maybe it is paladin. I don't know. Where the subclass is a dragon rider. I think. Tell me in the comments below if you know. I'll probably look it up. But tell me anyway. Okay. Dragon Age video game series. Drakes are male dragons that never develop wings. They're aggressive, territorial, and often mistaken for lesser dragons. But they're not. Okay? I am playing Dragon Age, but my computer can't handle video games right now, which is really frustrating. I have a laptop that's really, really old, and it used to be able to play video games, and now it can't, so I haven't finished Dragon Age, even though I started it like a couple of years ago. I will get there eventually, because I'm really excited to play those games. Tell me if you play, and if you actually like it. And if you've ran into a drake. Okay, Elder Scrolls, or Skyrim. While not explicitly called drakes, some dragon variants resemble drake-like traits, smaller, wingless, or elemental themed. In Magic the Gathering, drakes are a reoccurring creature type, usually depicted as smaller, agile, winged reptiles, distinct from the full dragons in both power and lore. So I didn't mention in our Western Dragon segment, but they're in Magic the Gathering. There's a whole deck that is just dragons. I think I have a friend. One of my friends has that deck. I think I even played him against him when he used it one time. We were in a group, so I don't remember specifically. It was a while ago. Anyway, I played Magic the Gathering, but only with my husband and his guy friends. I've just been allowed at the table, though I've been doing pretty good for myself. I played. Okay, sorry. A little tangent. Because we're talking about fantasy, okay? And Magic the Gathering is fantasy, and we talked about Lord of the Rings. Okay, so I've played 2 different decks against husband and his friends. I don't remember what one of them was, but I did do the Galadriel deck. And I kept seeing online, I was really kind of worried about taking the Galadriel deck because I was seeing that people didn't like it, but I did. Like, I almost beat the whole group. I lost to one person, and he had a really good deck. And the only thing I didn't care for with it was the council stuff. I kind of just took a lot of those out because I don't have the confidence or the charisma to be like, hey, let me have the ring, you guys. Because they never vote for that anyway. Why would you? Anyway, okay. The consequences aren't worth it, and I've not reached the level where I can convince other players to team up with me. Okay, not even my husband. All right. He loves me, but when it comes to him DMing, he never tells me anything about the campaign I am playing in. He'll tell me about campaigns I'm not in, but I'm married to him, so I'm in his campaigns. And then with Magic the Gathering, he'll help. He's actually very generous. He will help you understand what cards you have. But until he's no longer at the table, he's not going to do much more than give you a little bit of advice and explain what the card is. Anyway, sorry. If you like Magic the Gathering, let me know. Oh, and tell me what decks you really like. And if you have any tips on how to improve Galadriel deck. I've seen some stuff. I'm curious because I think it's already a pretty powerful deck. I even beat out the Rohirrim. Like, yeah. This is just who we are, okay? We are Chaos Gremlins in fantasy. All right, we have one more. I probably should have mentioned this before going on my Magic the Gathering side quest because a lot of people have probably already clicked off at this point because they don't care. But if you do, thanks for staying. Okay. My ring just attacked the table. Folklore. So the term drake has roots in Old English, draka. In some legends, they're linked to creatures like the lindwurm or the lambton worm, which are serpentine, wingless, and often tied to local curses or treasure hoards. And I believe that I have notes on these specific stories that we will later get into. Maybe. To wrap up this exploration of the drake, we've seen how these creatures have evolved from folklore guardians to symbols of primal power, greed, and raw destruction. While they may not be the fire-breathing, wisdom-filled creatures we think of when we imagine dragons. Hey. Wait. Nope. I can't think of any other music right now. Okay, anyway. Drakes have their own place in myth and legend. They serve as reminders of the untamed, often darker aspects of both nature and ourselves. And if you're interested in learning more about drakes, I recommend diving into medieval bestiaries and Norse sagas for additional stories and interpretations. The mythology surrounding these creatures is pretty vast, and there's always more to uncover. Thank you for joining me today on Fire and Legends, or Legends and Fire. I don't remember what I decided what it was. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed uncovering the mystery of the drake with me. Be sure to tune in next time for our next dragon creature from myth and history. Let me check real quick what's on our docket. Ooh, the worm. It's funny. My husband and his friends really like Dune, and they always, anytime a worm comes up or something happens, they'll say the phrase of the title of the main character, you know, the savior guy. And I wish I could say it, but I don't actually know the word. Something. Anyway, yes. Now, after having seen those movies, whenever I think of a worm, I think of those guys. And then you've got, they appear in The Hobbit, which if you saw Battle of the Five Armies, you'd get a pretty good visual of those. So yeah, we're going to be talking about worms with a Y, not an O, next time. I hope you will tune in. I hope you've been having fun. I hope you can forgive me for my tangents. Yeah, sorry about that, but not so much. We're talking about fantasy stuff, and I'm usually not very squirrely but I get excited. So here we are. Anyway, please be kind. Share your light in this dark, dark world. Everybody's struggling, so please just, know that everybody is just a person going through stuff. And hopefully we can just be comrades here. And I hope that these stories, these delving into mythology and creatures and folklore and all those things is fun, if not inspiring, and just kind of switches on a little tickle in your brain or get your juices flowing for creativity. But if that's not your thing and you're just here to learn and enjoy and have fun, I am glad you are here. That's it. I'm going to write a drake into one of my stories someday who is almighty and powerful, like a behemoth or something, but a drake who has power over the elements. Because why not? Like I said, learn the basics, learn the origins, and then make it your own. All right. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.